Recently, after returning from a week-long overseas trip, I was stunned to receive an excited call from my mother-in-law, Jessica. She eagerly told me that she had found $32,000. I was completely baffled. While I keep some emergency savings as a freelancer, I never keep that much cash on hand. My banking card was also secure, so there was no way anyone could have withdrawn that amount without my knowledge. Jessica explained that she had taken the money from a drawer in our sideboard, assuming we were financially well off. I appreciated her intentions, but I was left wondering why she thought she had permission to take it. The whole situation seemed odd. The mystery of the $32,000 lingered until a month later when Kevin, presumably her husband, came back home. Though the situation was unexpectedly resolved, there were still lingering questions. Over that month, Jessica called me over 136 times, most of which I ignored. When I finally answered, she accused me of something I couldn't quite understand. She seemed upset, but I couldn't grasp why. Her repeated calls had become an annoyance, and when I confronted her, she began blaming me for things I couldn't even comprehend. This ongoing confusion and the accusations she leveled only deepened the complexity of our interactions, leaving me to navigate a web of misunderstandings alongside the surprise discovery of the money. As I listened to Jessica's voice over the phone, I realized she was speaking to Lisa, a 33-year-old freelance jewelry designer. Lisa had shared her personal dreams and struggles with me, particularly her strong desire to have children, something difficult to balance with her demanding career. Kevin, also 33, had originally worked a regular job but had shifted his focus to help manage Lisa's growing business. When they married, Lisa was just starting out, so they depended on Kevin's steady income. But as Lisa's career progressed and became more successful, she needed help managing her increasingly hectic schedule. Seeing the potential in their partnership, Kevin left his stable job to become her business partner. Together, they turned Lisa's business into a thriving venture, securing contracts with top international brands. However, despite their professional success, they faced challenges, especially with Jessica, who lived alone in the family home. She had a distorted view of their lifestyle, believing they were living in luxury and constantly attending lavish parties and dinners with corporate elites. While these events were part of Lisa's professional duties, Jessica viewed them as mere indulgent leisure. Her misunderstanding extended to their finances as well. She frequently asked Lisa and Kevin for money to host her own social gatherings, assuming their luxurious lifestyle made them more than capable of funding her desires. This created tension, as Lisa and Kevin tried to navigate their growing success while managing Jessica's frequent financial requests and expectations. Although I'm financially able to support Jessica, our lifestyle isn't as glamorous as it seems. The events we attend are costly, and they are part of our professional obligations. Dressing well and dining at upscale venues is simply part of the job. Despite this, Jessica often expressed envy of our life, with a hint of sarcasm in her tone. While I consistently declined her requests for money, Kevin, feeling a sense of duty as her son, would occasionally give in to her demands, thinking it was a small sacrifice to maintain peace. But this only seemed to encourage her further, escalating our frustrations. Recently, Jessica visited us and insisted that Kevin buy her a lavish new dress for an upcoming social event. We suggested a more reasonable three-piece suit, but she was adamant about having a luxurious dress to match the grandeur she envisioned for the occasion. She even demanded a matching handbag, expecting us to cover that expense as well. To manage these constant financial requests more efficiently, Kevin decided to set up a credit card in Jessica's name, instructing her to use it for her personal expenses. At first, she overspent, and Kevin had to rein her in. He then made it clear that she needed to consult him before making any significant purchases. This system was meant to give her some autonomy while keeping her spending in check, helping us balance her desires with our financial realities. Despite having access to a credit card, Jessica's spending habits didn't improve. She even bought an expensive ring without consulting us first. The costs quickly spiraled out of control, creating a significant financial strain. Kevin, who managed the bills, realized the situation was becoming unsustainable. Frustrated with her blatant disregard for the financial consequences, he decided to set a spending limit on her card. When Jessica found out she couldn't cover her latest shopping spree due to the new limit, she was furious. She stormed into our house, upset and questioning the fairness of the restriction. She argued that her desire for luxury and enjoyment wasn't much different from our need to attend high-end events as part of our work. We tried to explain that our appearances at product launches and parties were necessary for our business, often taking place in extravagant settings. However, Jessica saw it as nothing more than indulgence, unable to grasp the professional obligations behind these events. After the spending cap was imposed, Jessica's complaints subsided, though she still occasionally voiced her frustrations to Kevin. Life returned to a semblance of normalcy, and by the end of the year, an exciting business opportunity came our way. A foreign brand offered us the chance to expand internationally, a proposal that thrilled me. It felt like a step towards joining the ranks of top designers. Kevin, who handled the business side, saw it as a golden opportunity we couldn't afford to miss. Even with this exciting development ahead, Kevin and I were concerned about how Jessica would react. given her history of extravagant spending. When we shared the news of our potential overseas expansion, her response was just as we feared. She accused us of planning to live luxuriously abroad under the pretense of work, and she voiced concerns that we might relocate permanently. I reassured her that we'd return once things settled overseas, but she remained anxious about being left behind. The ongoing debates about our plans were exhausting for both Kevin and me. Realizing we couldn't take her with us but wanting to ease her anxiety, Kevin, worn out by the constant arguments, suggested a different solution. He proposed sending her on a week-long vacation. Jessica, torn between being somewhat pleased and still skeptical, agreed to this compromise. Kevin offered to cover her flight and hotel costs, hoping this would bring some peace. However, the calm didn't last long. A few days later, while Kevin was busy with overseas arrangements, Jessica showed up at our house with another request. She wanted extra money to shop during her trip. When I asked about the credit card Kevin had given her, she reluctantly admitted that he had taken it back, concerned she might misuse it due to fluctuating. I was stunned when Jessica mentioned a sum of money I had no recollection of setting aside. The conversation quickly took an unexpected turn. While I knew I had savings in my account for business emergencies, it was impossible for Jessica to have withdrawn any of it without my consent. Then, with a casual tone, she revealed she had found $332,000 in a drawer in our house's sideboard. My mind raced. Keeping such a large sum of cash at home was completely out of the question for us. I immediately informed Jessica that if she had taken money from our house without permission, it was theft, regardless of her being family. I emphasized the seriousness of the situation, especially if that money had been set aside for an important business deal. Throughout her trip, there had been no disruptions in our business dealings, which made her claim even more suspicious. Jessica, however, seemed completely unbothered by the gravity of the situation. She admitted to using the money as though it were no big deal, expecting that simply telling me would settle everything. I pointed out that taking money without permission was not only unethical but also illegal. She defensively argued that, given our lavish lifestyle, she saw no harm in sharing in it a little, almost as if she were doing us a favor. This reasoning only deepened my concerns about her lack of boundaries and understanding of responsibility. Jessica's casual attitude toward her actions left me shaken. Despite taking the money without asking, she seemed unconcerned about the consequences. She insisted I would speak with Kevin when he returned, confident that, as her son, he would understand. She even made a dismissive comment that $32,000 wasn't much to him. I agreed to pass her message on, but I was deeply unsettled by her lack of awareness. As I ended the call, she casually thanked me and asked me to send her regards to Kevin. Confused about the $32,000 in cash, I confronted Kevin that evening. He explained that he had withdrawn the money 12 days earlier for an urgent payment that required cash. I was shocked he had kept such a large sum in a drawer. Considering the obvious security risks, Kevin seemed uneasy when he asked if I knew anything about the money. Earlier that day, Jessica had called, gleefully thanking us for the $32,000 and mentioning how much fun she had spending it. It was only then that I realized the money did indeed belong to Kevin. However, we still had no idea why such a large amount had been withdrawn. I asked Kevin why he had left that much money at home, especially when we typically handled transactions via bank transfers. He explained that after limiting Jessica's credit card, she had secretly borrowed money from various sources, including consumer finance cards and credit cards she opened without his knowledge. When Kevin found out, it added a new layer of complexity to our already strained relationship with Jessica. In response, Kevin had gathered all of Jessica's credit cards and taken out cash to address her mounting debts. Even though he gave her the money, he was fully aware that she might spend it recklessly. This revelation helped clarify some aspects of the situation, but the reasons behind Jessica's actions remained unclear. I was inclined to handle the repayment of her debts through direct bank transfers, as this would be more straightforward and traceable. However, Kevin preferred to avoid leaving too many records in our bank accounts, fearing it could jeopardize trust with our business partners. So, he chose to withdraw cash and deal with the payments personally. Supporting Jessica's overseas trip was also a gesture of goodwill, acknowledging that, once we moved abroad, we wouldn't be as available to her as we had been. As time passed, Jessica began calling me excessively, sometimes up to 136 times a day. Kevin had advised me to ignore her constant attempts to contact us, but her persistence made me uneasy. One day, her voice broke through, desperate and apologetic for the incessant calls during our hectic moving preparations. She confessed she was facing daily payment demands and that Kevin wasn't answering her calls. In desperation, she turned to me as her last hope for help. I was taken aback by Kevin's decision to take such a drastic stance against his mother, especially if he had set aside money specifically to help clear her debts. Had he used those funds as intended, perhaps Jessica wouldn't have found herself overwhelmed by calls and letters from finance companies and creditors. Instead, she was now bombarded with relentless collection efforts, seemingly powerless to resolve her financial troubles. The entire situation painted a painful picture, revealing the tangled web of family dynamics and the difficulties of managing both finances and relationships. It felt like something straight out of a drama series. When Jessica called, pleading for help and insisting it was her son's duty to assist her, I couldn't help but feel the weight of her distress. I mentioned her pleas to Kevin when he came home, but his response was unexpectedly cold. He bluntly dismissed her, pointing out that Jessica had squandered her chances and had brought this situation upon herself. Following his lead, and despite my own desire to offer support, I decided to block Jessica's number. She was his mother, and if he chose to distance himself, there was little I could do to change that. As the day of our overseas move drew nearer, surrounded by boxes in our cluttered home, a deep sense of helplessness washed over me regarding